Cool. Right. So, WebRTC Reborn. So I'm Dan Jenkins. Yep, Dan_Jenkins on Twitter. Make sure you tweet me and follow me. That's all cool. So I'm a Node.js developer. I've been doing Node probably 6 years now, like when it was back at like 0.4. Node is really, really interesting right now. Everything's kind of really hotting up. I love Lego. You'll probably see that I like Lego an awful lot throughout this talk. I'm a general geek, and I founded my own company probably 2 years ago now. And I love open source. I love giving back to open source. I love using open source. Yeah. I'm a Google developer expert. That doesn't mean that I work for Google. The experts program is there to get people like me that know what they're talking about, talking to people like you. That's what it's there for. And so I'm a web technologies GDE. Yeah. There's my GitHub. No one cares. There's my Twitter again. And there's my company. So Nimble Ape. Yeah. We do consulting for Node, microservices, Internet of Things, and WebRTC. But let's get on to the interesting things. So WebRTC. How many people have heard of WebRTC? OK, that's good. How many people have built something with WebRTC? Ah, interesting. No hands went up. How many people have used WebRTC in some form or another? So only 2 hands went up. How many people have used Hangouts in Chrome? How many people have used Facebook Messenger to make a video call or an audio call to one of your contacts? How many people, well, probably no one's used Skype for web yet. It's like brand new. Appear.in is pretty nifty. Screen Hero got bought out by Slack about 18 months ago, I think. Talkie.io, Amazon Mayday. On your Kindle, Kindle Fire, I think. When you call customer service, you're using WebRTC to do that. And a little tool called instant.io. There's a ton of other things, but I can pretty much guarantee you, if I ask you the question again, how many people have used WebRTC? Bit of, come on, I know it's 10 o'clock. Like, how many people have used WebRTC? Like, the whole room goes up again. So everyone has pretty much used WebRTC now, even if they don't know about it. And that's pretty cool in the sense that WebRTC is a technology, not a product. So yeah, what is WebRTC? WebRTC is web real-time communication. The RTC bit has been around for donkey's years. We use it in telephony, in VoIP, in Skype, all of this jazz. We've been using RTC for years. It's the web bit that's really, really interesting. So WebRTC is inherently peer-to-peer. Something like 92% of calls, sessions, sorry. Let's stop calling them calls. They're sessions. 92% of sessions, 93% of sessions, something like that, are peer-to-peer. So there's a media channel for audio and video. You can send audio, you can send video, or you can send audio and video down the media channel. There's a data channel for data, and you can send whatever data you want down the data channel. It's entirely up to you. And that's pretty cool and leads to some pretty exciting applications that you can start creating. And there's 3 core APIs that you need to know about. So there's get user media. Everyone probably knows about get user media. It's how we access webcam, tabs, things like that. RTC peer connection and RTC data connection. Those are the things that allow us to send media and data. So peer-to-peer, like maybe everyone in the room is saying, well, what's peer-to-peer? So I've got a tablet and I've got a Mac or something. And they're going to connect to one another. So that's peer-to-peer. But, I mean, you've got to have something in the middle to create that magic. At the very beginning, we weren't very good at explaining this. So you need a signaling server in the middle. You need to ask your peer, I want to make a phone call for you. It's called an offer. And then the other peer goes, yeah, OK, I'm going to accept that. and here's some data, like here's my constraints. I'm going to send you video as well. I'm going to send you audio as well. So, and that's all done using the signaling server. And you can have 2 peers, or you can have 3 peers, and that's called a mesh network, where you interconnect between all of them. Or you can have as many peers as you want. Again, that is considered a mesh network. That's probably not recommended in terms of making a 8-party video call, because what you're actually doing is sending your audio and video to every single participant. And that's taxing on bandwidth, it's taxing on CPU to be able to encode and decode all of that. But you can do that when it comes to data, because you've got no encoding and decoding, and so the CPU is not being taxed in that way. Your network bandwidth might be being taxed, maybe, if you're sending enough data, but that is entirely possible with WebRTC for data especially. But the other big thing about WebRTC is there's no plugins. There's no plugins, it's all native. Down the bottom there I say extensions may be required. And that's because extensions may be required for, say, tab sharing, or window sharing, or screen sharing. It's all to do with security. It's a decision that was taken so that you kind of had to have this extension in your browser that kind of allowed you access to all of this stuff. But I mean, the majority of WebRTC, there are no plugins, there are no extensions. It's just certain things from a security point of view that they took the decision that you needed to make a browser extension. But the cool thing is, it opens the door for awesome. So I was going to do a demo, and it's now going to have broken because I've restarted my laptop. But let's try and do it anyway. OK, so everyone get your phone out, or your laptops, or something. And make sure it's not on quiet. Oh yeah, so the phone can't be iOS. So it has to be Android, or it has to be a desktop. And you have to be in Chrome, or Firefox, or Opera. I'm trying to get this done, because this is pretty neat. So let me find the share URL. There's the share URL. I had a really nice URL, but that would have gone. bit.ly Let's go to bit.ly. You're not going to have a nice URL, so we'll just deal with it. OK, let's go out of there, and let's change that URL. OK, so everyone, OK, play. So everyone go to that URL on your device. I'll do it too. Make sure your device is loud. bit.ly /1, capital R, capital W, capital E. Pardon? So we'll do something eventually. You should see instant.io, and it should say it's downloading a torrent. RU PTW. OK, awesome. So I love this demo, especially when it kills conference Wi-Fi. Shouldn't do that today. We're in a university. Should be OK. So let me explain what's going on there. So instant.io is using WebRTC. It's using the data connection. And it uses something called WebTorrent. WebTorrent was built to follow the torrent spec, etc., and it distributes torrent information via WebRTC. And so all of you are now considered peers to one another. So the first person to connect to the website would have connected to my laptop, and they would have started streaming data via the data channel from my laptop. You probably would have got like 50% of the file, and then someone else opened up their browser and got to it, and instead of just taking it from my laptop, they took it from both of us. And that's how torrents work, isn't it? So at the end, the last person to have connected might have connected to like 6 people or 7 people in the room and got that file really, really quickly. But yeah, all of that is web technology, not hitting a web server at all, other than for the signaling. And you were able to take a video that was in my browser, and get it to your browser with no plugins or anything. You didn't have to install anything. And that's pretty cool, don't you think? Yeah? So, carry on. So I'll come to that later on. OK. Right, let's move on. So WebRTC is an open technology. Google open sourced it about 4 years ago now. It was just under 4 years ago. And you can put WebRTC in browsers natively, mobile devices natively, and loads of other devices. Anything that can run the underlying stack is WebRTC enabled. So a really, really low-powered device that understands the data protocol in WebRTC can be WebRTC enabled. One of my friends called Tim Panton, have you heard of the Lego EV3 things? So Lego make this cool toy and you can program it. And there's a little brick called the EV3. And some guy on the internet put Java on the little brick. And it's like I think it's like 300 megahertz processor, like ultra low power device. And what my friend Tim did was he wrote the data channel protocol in Java. And he was able to connect to, he made a little dog out of this Lego EV3 stuff. And he was able to control the Lego dog via WebRTC data channel from his laptop to the EV3 thing. Pure WebRTC. I'm pretty sure it's like a 300 megahertz processor. That's pretty cool in itself. I mean, it can't handle video and audio because of all the encoding and decoding, but it can handle the data. So that's pretty cool. Like really, really low power devices. For me as a web developer, the cool thing about WebRTC, I can scale it using technologies that I understand. It's web scale. So having a signaling server talk to my clients over WebSocket, for example, this is all stuff that I understand, and I can scale that. Like we know how to scale web servers. It's a done thing. For me, going into like understanding how to scale telephony stuff, that's crazy and it's really horrible. You don't want to do it. But WebRTC is web. So we've got web scale. And those media servers that I was just talking about, there's little dependence on media servers now. So earlier I said 92, 93% of calls succeed without anything else. That 7% need media servers to be able to kind of bridge gaps. I'll talk more about that later. But because of that, launching a product is easier on the wallet because you don't have to deal with having media servers up constantly for traffic that you barely get. You have to have some, but before WebRTC, you would have had to have maybe like 100 media servers up just to handle the traffic that you might get. Now you don't really have to do that. And because it's easier to launch products now, there are awesome apps being launched today. So there's an application called Be My Eyes, and it lends your eyes to the blind. So someone that isn't able-sighted downloads the app. Someone that is able-sighted downloads the app. And when someone that is blind wants to be able to see something, wants to understand what it is and what it looks like and everything to do with it, they can open up this app, and they can say, I want some help. Someone that can see, is able-sighted, gets an alert and says, this person wants to be able to see what's in front of them, and they can accept it. And instantly, you've got this audio-video call, and the able-sighted person is able to describe what's in front of the camera for the blind person. This is something really, really cool that helps humanity. There's another one called Mind Me. This is the CDC in the USA hired a company to make an app to help suicide prevention. And so this app, Mind Me, anyone that has depression, etc., can download it. And there's many, many stages of it. But essentially, the end stage is someone that is feeling down and feels as though they want to commit suicide, they can open up this app and they can talk to a psychologist 24/7. And so that psychologist can help that person get past whatever they're feeling at that time. That's pretty cool too. That helps humanity. And I can't get over wanting to help humanity with technology that we have today. Cystic fibrosis telehealth in Australia. So Australia is pretty big. It doesn't look very big on the atlas, but it is. And yeah, so for patients to be able to get to the best doctor for cystic fibrosis, they were having to travel like 3 or 4 hours just to get to an appointment for, say, half an hour, which that 3 or 4 hours takes a big toll on your health, which is the whole point of like going to the doctor in the first place. So there's this telehealth app that allows people in Australia not to have to travel 3 or 4 hours, and they can just talk to their doctor over the phone, video conversations. It sends a load of extra stats and using the data channel, blah, blah, blah. But this is, again, helping humanity. There's another one in Texas, in the USA, to help people with cancer. They were having to travel something like 3 hours just to get to the right doctor. So developers are building apps that help humanity. And that's pretty special. And if we can take today's technology and start helping humanity rather than boring business cases, then that's pretty special. What I mean by boring business cases is let's take Amazon Mayday. It's a customer service tool, and it's great. The person on the other end of the conversation can see my screen, can see my Kindle screen. They can see what's happening on my Kindle. I can see their face, and I can see them talking. I know that they're actually listening to what I have to say because they're not hidden by a phone call. And so all of this helps the business, and it helps them get extra information, and it builds a better relationship with the customer. I mean, that's great. If we can stop having shitty customer service, and our operator on the phone can not have to ask us a load of account information because they already know that we've come from a logged-in device, etc., then that's awesome. But, I mean, none of that really compares to helping people and helping humanity. So yeah, let's build more apps that help humanity. But let's get on to like WebRTC. So let's talk a bit about the history of WebRTC and maybe where it's going and why it's getting better, etc. So it's 4 years old, and you always mess up the first child. I haven't got any children, but I mean, I've got 3 brothers. I'm one of 4. I know that like we always mess up the first child. It's a fact. You're learning. That's how it is. It's the same as a dog. I've got a dog. I know that I messed up I didn't train the dog very, very well when I first got the dog. I know that if I got another dog, I would be able to do it better because we learn. And this was the case with WebRTC. It was the first time that we've had to kind of implement these kind of technologies in the web. And it's completely different to anything that we've ever done before. So yeah, we messed up. At the start, everyone was really, really excited. Like, everyone submitted talks to conferences, and they were like, "Look, no plugins. Like, I can replace Skype. This is awesome." I might have said it's freaking awesome quite a few times. And yeah, developers went and tried it. Developers usually failed. And that's because we didn't tell developers about complicated stuff, because we didn't want to scare web developers, because web developers never had to deal with this before. And so as soon as you start mentioning scary stuff, people generally turn off and don't listen, and they don't get interested in it. But really what happened was we didn't tell them enough about any of the complexity. And so they'd go home and they'd try it, and they'd usually fail. Has anyone that knows about WebRTC ever heard of stun or turn? No hands. And that's not surprising. I'll explain what stun and turn are later. Yeah, we failed you. We as as WebRTC evangelists failed web developers. But that's all changed. So yeah, let's start talking about what's changed. So there's a strong community around WebRTC now. There are 3 Google developer experts. So I'm one of them. Phil Nash from Twilio in the UK is also one of them. And someone called Ben Klang from Mojolingo in the US is also one of them. I mean, there are a load of other Google developer experts that know about WebRTC, but this is really like, this is what we do. There's WebRTC Weekly. So everyone's seen the weekly emails, different types of weekly emails. There's JavaScript Weekly, there's HTML5 Weekly, Real-Time Weekly. There's a WebRTC Weekly, WebRTCweekly.com. It's run by a guy called Sahi and Chris. And it's great. It really, you don't have to kind of keep up to date with things during the week. You can just get this one email at the end of the week, and it tells you roughly what's gone on. There's a blog called WebRTC Hacks, WebRTChacks.com. And that's really a blog about stuff that's going on in WebRTC, like code demos, news, etc. But I mean, let's take a look at the page views. This was about 6 weeks ago. I haven't updated it since. But their most, they publish these publicly. Their most popular article was viewed almost 37,000 times from unique views. That's pretty, for the amount of people building things with WebRTC today, that's actually a huge number. For the people, like I asked earlier, how many people were actually building something with WebRTC and no hands went up? But maybe you're interested. And so you're reading articles and looking how to use the technology. So that's 37,000 unique views. 37,000, 28,000, 20,000, 20,000, yeah. These are pretty cool numbers for one blog post. I mean, if I had 37,000 views on one of my blog posts, I'd be pretty happy. Browser support. So over the past 4 years, browser support is night and day. So there's Chrome on desktop, there's Chrome on Android, there's Firefox. Firefox on Android does work. There's Opera on desktop. I think if you get the right version of Opera in the right mobile, it works as well. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. Like Opera Mini doesn't work because Opera Mini is just, that's how Opera Mini works. Like you go off to the server for every single incarnation of JavaScript, and it kind of renders it for you and then sends it back as HTML. That's just how Opera Mini works, and so there's no support for WebRTC in Opera Mini. Microsoft Edge has some incarnation of WebRTC in it called ORTC. ORTC, so yeah, let's tell the story of ORTC. So probably a year ago now, a bit over a year ago, Microsoft came out with ORTC as something, and everyone cried and said, Microsoft, why are you doing this again? Why are you kind of destroying the web, and we hate you? Ever since, everything's got a little bit better, but ORTC is object real-time communication. And so over the past year, everyone's kind of looked at ORTC more and gone, oh, some of this stuff's actually pretty good, and we're missing this stuff from WebRTC. And so I think something like 70% of ORTC has gone into the draft that's currently being made for WebRTC. Might be a little bit lower than that, but a large proportion of ORTC stuff is going into the WebRTC draft that's in last call right now. I know that I'm kind of shifting around here a little bit, but there's a lot to explain. A lot's changed in the past, say, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So there's a draft for WebRTC. It's not a spec right now, and it's in last call right now. Last call ends in December, at the end of December, I think, and then hopefully after that we'll have a nice spec. So yeah, a lot of ORTC has gone into WebRTC, but Microsoft Edge just has ORTC today, and that's not the end of the world. But who's missing? So Safari, desktop, and mobile. That's not to say that you can't use WebRTC on our iOS devices today, but you have to write them as an app. You can't use them in the browser. But there's hope. So about 3 months, 4 months, there was a project called WebRTC-In-Webkit. It's where all of the projects all the people that use WebKit that wanted WebRTC, because it's not just Apple that uses WebKit for Safari. Loads and loads of other people use WebKit because it's open source. Loads of other companies said, right, we're tired of waiting for Apple. We're going to put WebRTC in WebKit because we want it. I mean, part of it was like, come on, Apple, like, come join us. Like, we're happy to kind of put in some work too. But most of it was, we want WebRTC, let's do some work. Like, it's open source, that's how open source should work. We shouldn't just rely on the main contributors. So there was a project called WebRTC-In-Webkit. And towards the end of that project, Apple put an engineer on that project. And they contributed code to get user media, to get it working for Safari. So that was pretty huge news. This was about 6 weeks ago, I think. I've been on the road quite a bit, so kind of time has morphed into time. But pretty sure it was about 6 weeks, maybe 7 weeks. But a couple weeks ago, something else interesting happened. This job posting went up on Apple's website for a WebKit media engineer, WebRTC. So let's imagine the WebRTC word wasn't there. We could probably speculate, and we'd be like, well, maybe this is happening, but they put WebRTC in the job title, in what they want. So yeah, hopefully by May next year, WWDC, we'll have WebRTC in WebKit, in Safari. Safari uses the same code base for mobile and desktop. And so in theory, once it happens in one set, it will happen in the other. And we'll all be really, really happy. So this is even huge news. Yeah, freaking awesome, right? So yeah, hopefully by May next year, we'll have this really nice layer of browsers that just support WebRTC. I mean, I'm not going to go into why I think Apple have taken so long and why Microsoft took so long, etc. Let's not look at the negatives. Let's look at the positives. Microsoft now has ORTC, and looks like Apple will have WebRTC soon. I say WWDC because that's how Apple updates their browsers in mobile, for example. Like in Android, you've got something called WebView, and you can update WebView completely separately to the OS. And so that's how Android updates WebRTC now, because it's part of the web stuff. Apple does things differently, and you have to have incremental updates to the OS to be able to update Safari in mobile. And so to release a new version of Safari won't just happen tomorrow. It has to be with an OS update, and that's likely to be WWDC. So cool. Hopefully May, everything's going to be great. And if it doesn't happen in May, then you can send me tweets or emails, and because you've got my Twitter now. You can say, no, you were wrong. So those supported browsers, over the past probably year, their support and their progress has been amazing. And that's really awesome from a developer's point of view, but it's also awesome from a business point of view. So we all say move fast. Like everyone's heard of the term move fast and break things. We're not scared of moving fast, and we're not scared of breaking a few things every once in a while because we're moving fast. And that's just how we deal with it in web. But the browsers have been moving fast and not breaking things for the past 6 to 8 months. And this instills confidence in knowing that you're going to write something today and it not be broken next week, which was a big thing for many, many developers, many, many businesses. We as developers, we love to build things, but I mean, if there's no money on the other end of it, then those things don't usually get developed. So businesses need to have confidence in the technology too. So because things aren't breaking all the time, businesses are more likely to actually put money into it and go, right, now it's time. It's time, let's start building stuff. And for IE and Safari today, we've got plugins. There's a plugin called Temesis. It's probably the best plugin out there, and it enables WebRTC in IE and Safari. Not that you want to make IE support WebRTC. I mean, who's still developing for IE, really? Like, get out. So I understand. Businesses need to support their user base, and if their user base is on IE, then that's where they support it. But we don't drive the web forward unless we start developing for the future. And so let's develop for the future and develop WebRTC for Chrome, etc. And the users on IE just don't get WebRTC. And when they go, well, I can't use this, and you say, well, use Chrome, use a good browser, use Firefox. Yeah. So there's a API, there's a WebRTC API, and browser status check website. This is run by the team at And-Yet called Is WebRTC Ready Yet.com. And there's a big table, and it tells you whether or not this browser supports this API, and whether or not it entirely supports it, kind of half supports it, or doesn't support it at all. That's pretty useful for actually figuring out like your specific case, whether or not it's going to work. And simple signaling? Yeah, simple signaling. That signaling server that I was talking about earlier, there's now, that whole process is really, really simple to what it is maybe 3 years ago. There are a load of open source projects that give you open source signaling servers now. So the most noted, like for me as a Node developer, the easiest one is Socket.io. So Socket.io itself doesn't give you a signaling server, but the fact that Socket.io enables WebSockets from client to client gives you the ability to make a signaling server. Very, very recently, they added a peer-to-peer module into Socket.io, which enables you to have, you know, in Socket.io, does everyone know what Socket.io is? Yeah, I'm seeing nodding heads. So Socket.io, you can send a message to another person, can't you? Another client. And what was happening was you were sending it up to the web server via WebSocket, and the server was then sending it back down to the other person. That's how it worked. What they added a couple, I think 2 months ago, something like that, they had a peer-to-peer module, which enables you to send a message to your other person peer-to-peer. So they've implemented a signaling server in Socket.io in this module. And that's pretty nifty. I've not actually tried it yet. I've read all about it, but I haven't tried it. I don't know whether or not you could use it to instantiate video calls or audio calls. But in theory, all of the work's there, and it's all open source. So someone could just go in and add some methods to say, start audio call, start video call, instead of start conversation or whatever it is today. Simple signaling. Yeah, you need a signaling server. Who knew? This is one of the things that we didn't really talk about very much when WebRTC first came out. People didn't talk about the need for signaling servers, and everyone kind of went, well, peer-to-peer, that's cool, but like, does it just happen by magic? No, it doesn't happen by magic. You need a signaling server. And there's loads of open source ones. So Socket.io peer-to-peer, Socket.io/blog/Socket.io peer-to-peer. It's at the bottom. Go there if you are interested, and maybe contribute and have a start audio call or whatever. There's something called matrix.org, which is an effort to kind of standardize all of this. There's asterisk. Asterisk is a VoIP server, but it does enable signaling. Signalmaster, so this is from the Andiet team. And there are loads and loads and loads of other ones. Go to Google, search for open source signaling servers, and you'll get a list full of them. So the other cool thing that has happened in the past probably 2 years is documentation. Who knew we need documentation? I mean, this was the trouble 4 years ago. It was brand new, and there was no documentation out on the internet. There were kind of half-broken bits of information because the browsers weren't very compatible with one another. And so Mozilla might put out a blog post, and it didn't work with Chrome. And so, yeah, this whole thing has got so much better over the past 2 years. So there's github.com/WebRTC. That's run by the Google WebRTC team. The Google WebRTC team are really the team that kind of drives it forward an awful lot. I'm not saying Mozilla don't put in enough. They do, by far, and they're innovating too. They've got features in Firefox that Chrome doesn't have. But really, it's in my personal opinion, it's the Google team. There's bitbucket.org/WebRTC/CodeLab. There's a CodeLab there from Google that goes through things as well. There's WebRTC-experiment.com from this guy called Muz Khan. And basically, WebRTC-experiment.com gives you pretty much anything you can do in WebRTC, and it explains to you how you can do it. That's a really, really nice resource. There's a load of other ones. So there's a load of samples on github.com/WebRTC. And then there's WebRTC. So that's the top link there is the actual code. The second link is the GitHub Pages version that goes through all of that code. And then g.co/WebRTC is something, it's like a Google Doc that is constantly being added to by someone called Sam Dutton. Sam Dutton works for Google. And that document has like loads of resources on WebRTC. So that's actually probably the most important link out of all of those. So stun and turn servers. I talked briefly about them earlier, but you still don't know what they do you? No. I'm seeing no. And that's fine. So stun. Stun gives you a mirror, essentially. You go off to the stun server, and you say, what's my IP address? What's my public IP address? And it will come back to you, and it will go whatever it is on the internet, IPv4 or IPv6. Siri doesn't make a good stun server. You can ask Siri today, what's my IP address? And it will give you the it will give you the address of this building. Yeah, who knew? Like Siri should know this. Like Siri is going off to a server. Like Siri should be able to tell me what my IP address is. Siri doesn't make a good stun server. Turn servers. Also, people refer to it as a media relay because that's what it's actually doing. So earlier, I was talking about our peer-to-peer connections. And that's all awesome, and that happens like 92, 93% of the time. But that red line in the middle there is a nasty corporate firewall. And the nasty corporate firewall hates everyone. And it's not letting the WebRTC call get enabled. And so the green circle up there is a turn server, is a media relay. And what's happening is the peers can't make the connection directly, and so they go up to the media relay. They both connect to the media relay, and they send their media up to the relay, and it relays it. Hey presto. So that's turn. Stun and turn. Turn servers can be stun servers too, and generally are. So that's stun and turn. I hope that makes it a little bit more clear as to what they are. So there's more choice with stun and turn servers now. At the very beginning, there was like one main one, and it was difficult to install for web developers. Like, we wanted to kind of test all this stuff out, and it was difficult. Today, there are Docker images, for example. You can just go and say, I want a turn server, type into dockerhub.com, turn, and you'll get a list of a load of them. And you can just run it. And hey presto, it works. I don't have to care about compiling into C and all of that business. And don't forget, you need to address a stun server in your app to make it work. And this is where it failed 4 years ago. Everyone went home from these conferences, and they wrote up the demo that they saw, and they had 2 tabs open in their browser. And they were like, yeah, it's working. And you'd get some feedback and some screeching, and you'd be like, yeah, this is awesome. I can replace Skype. Then they put the files up on their server or something, and they'd send a link to their friend. And it didn't work. It didn't work at all. And that's because people didn't tell people that they needed stun servers. How can you instantiate a call from someone outside of your network to someone inside your network without knowing your public IP address? It just doesn't work. And that's where everything failed 4 years ago. That's like the most basic step. That's why things failed. So you need to address a stun server. But you don't need to go and make a stun server because there are a load of them out on the internet. Google gives you access to 5. If you Google stun servers, there are a load of them. Stun is actually used in VoIP today. And so there are a load of public ones already out there. The 8% of the time that your call needs a turn server and you don't have a turn server, then it's going to fail. And you can kind of go, well, it failed, so I need to have a turn server. But you don't have to like run your own stun server. So yeah, don't repeat history. Use a stun server. There are modules on NPM. So like I said, I'm a Node guy. There are modules in other languages too. But there are modules that make it really, really easy. You can kind of bolt together all of these modules in NPM, and you can kind of come out with a solution. You don't have to write any code, almost. And there are many open source wrappers around WebRTC in the client, for example. So at the beginning, Google had adapter.js, and this normalized WebRTC in Firefox. It took away all the prefixes, etc. Took away all of the idiosyncrasies that were slightly different in Firefox to how they were in Chrome, etc. And that's really cool. But there's also Peer.js. There's also EasyRTC. There's Simple WebRTC. There's loads of them. They all have like different incarnations. Temesis, that plugin that I was talking about, has adapter.js. And you have to use their adapter.js because that's what enables their plugin. That's what normalizes their plugin. But this is probably one of the biggest things that we've got today, 4 years on, that we didn't have at the beginning. And that's a platform as a service. We don't just have one platform as a service. We've got a load of them. So there's Zura, which used to be Forge, which used to be Ascision, and I think Ascision used to be something before that. They got bought out like 5 times. I find it hard to keep up. Candy, Talkbox, Twilio are launching WebRTC video and audio. Well, they already do WebRTC audio. They don't do WebRTC video. There's a private beta of that right now that they released at SignalConf in May, and that's still in beta today. But if you want access to it, like ping me or whatever, and I can kind of get you the right person. Twilio, Respoke, Cisco bought out a company called Tropo, and there's a load of other ones. That guy earlier that I was talking about, Sahi, he keeps a list of them, and I think there's like major players in the market. There's like 70 odd for different kind of purposes. So find the right one for your purpose, find the right pricing structure for your purpose, or whatever. But I mean, that's really thinking about like the business aspects. But if you just want to go and play with WebRTC and kind of make a proof of concept and to take to your boss or whatever and say, look, this is really cool, and there's a real business case for this. You don't have to go and create everything from scratch anymore. You can just use a platform. All the platforms give you something for free for however long. Go build it, and I can guarantee you can make a WebRTC call using a platform within 10 minutes. It's just JavaScript. Pretty much all of those give you SDKs as well for iOS and Android. So it's not just web. They all give you SDKs too. And finally, like the big improvements over the past, say, 8 months, 9 months, have been in mobile. Mobile performance has been huge. Huge performance gains in what we're actually able to do in mobile compared to a year ago. So today, it's 5 times faster in rendering video using those SDKs than it was like a year ago. There's huge improvements in CPU and GPU and CPU usage, and huge impact on battery usage as well. That was a big issue for mobile. You would have a WebRTC call, and it would drain your battery a lot. And so people didn't want to write applications that were going to kill people's batteries, because people complain when apps kill their battery. Because we expect our phone to last a whole day, and they don't usually. Audio improvements on iOS and Android. And this is the reason why there are huge rendering performances and performance gains and using less CPU and GPU. It's because they're now using the hardware encoder within the phone itself. So your phone can actually handle dealing with H.264 codec, etc. And instead of doing all of that in software, it's now passing it off to the hardware support and getting the hardware to do it. The hardware can do it faster and cheaper. And that's in Android and iOS. So Google are the team that actually bring out the Android and iOS SDKs. They're not just interested in Android, they're interested in iOS too. And a team called eFace2Face made a Cordova iOS plugin. And this was pretty big news too, in terms of, as a web developer, I don't know how to write native apps. I don't have the time to necessarily put into learning how to write native iOS and Android apps. That's why we like Cordova, because it means that we can write JavaScript and we can write stuff that we know, and it all gets compiled down. So this team made an iOS plugin for Cordova. So web developers can go and write cool apps using web technologies, and it all gets compiled down. And I guess I should talk a little bit about some changes that have happened very recently. Chrome will now limit WebRTC things to trusted origins. You may have heard that they are restricting it to HTTPS. But that's not strictly true. They're actually taking it down to trusted origins, which is localhost and HTTPS, for example. But you can't use self-signed HTTPS sets because it's not considered a trusted origin. But who's heard of Let's Encrypt? 3 people in the room. So Let's Encrypt is a movement to be able to give everyone free SSL sets. Let's stop calling them SSL sets. Let's start calling them TLS sets, because that's what they actually are. SSL is deprecated. SSL is bad. So Let's Encrypt is currently in a private beta, but the public beta they announced yesterday or the day before. The public beta is coming December 3rd. So everyone will be able to access TLS certs for free. Won't have to pay your provider anymore, £10 a cert or however much it is. And you can get really great service from Let's Encrypt. And hopefully that's going to disrupt the whole cert game, and all of our providers will start giving us certs for free, because underneath they might be using Let's Encrypt for us. I don't know. So improvements are being delivered all the time, and that's the biggest thing in terms of what I as a developer wants to see. I want to see improvements, constant improvements. And so back in May, I think, maybe April, I can't remember, there was a show called Cranky Geek over in San Francisco, and the Google team did a huge update there. They explained all of this. Maybe it wasn't that far back. August? Anyway. And so, yeah, if you're interested, go and take a look at their update. It's on SlideShare, or go take a look at the video, watch the video, and kind of explains all of that. The mobile benefits, the HTTPS stuff, and it explains where they're headed. Like there's huge improvements in echo cancellation, for example, that they had almost rolled out to everyone other than OS X. And a couple of weeks ago, they rolled it out to OS X. And so everyone has better echo cancellation now. You probably haven't even noticed, but underneath, it's faster and better. So yeah, I would highly recommend going and watching that video. And I could probably go on for another hour, but I can't. So it's time to give WebRTC another go. Whether or not you tried it 4 years ago and failed, 3 years ago and failed, or maybe 2 years ago and it was working, but it was breaking every week, and you kind of said, well, I'm not going to put any more time into this because I shouldn't have to. It's now time to come back and give WebRTC another go, and maybe start creating some of those apps that I was talking about that help humanity rather than businesses. So after the whole Apple and Microsoft question that I used to get asked the most, the second question that I would get asked the most was, is WebRTC production ready? And I'd say, heck yes. People like Facebook are using it in production today. And I can't even remember the last stat for Facebook. Millions and millions of users. So yeah, we need you to come back and start using WebRTC again. Go use it. Go create awesome apps. Go help humanity. Finally, my business are hiring real-time communications developers. If anyone's interested, ping me an email. And thank you very much. There's all my Creative Commons images. Has anyone got any questions? Oh, we are almost out of time. Come and ask me afterwards if you've got any questions, because it seems like we are bang out of time. Thank you very much.